Hey Southside Sox fans, it's a new team, a new season, and a spanking new podcast. This is your friendly neighborhood writer, Year of the Hamster, sending it over to our new podcast hosts, Brett Ballantini and Matt Smith.
There you go. It's
hey,
very...
Sox
oh my God, it's repeating. I knew I'd screw something up. Okay, well, that's enough hamster for everyone. The very first words spoken on a Southside Sox podcast, I guess Mach 2, yes, not the Sox Machine guys, in 2018, when Brett Ballantini did not at all want to do a podcast, so he actually placed ads on Southside Sox to find someone to do a podcast, because the last thing I wanted to do was a podcast. Matthew Smith, for about 3 podcasts, took it on, and we cajoled, given the fact that the staff was about 3 people at that time, cajoled the enigmatic, mysterious Year of the Hamster to provide the intros for us. She actually recorded several. They got increasingly acerbic, and they increasingly mocked the co-host, Brett Ballantini. But I couldn't find any of those. So that's the one that's going to lead off this celebration of 600 podcasts, which is what this podcast is. Joining me is the founder of Visiting Dugout, a podcast that has run 82 and strong. It's going to lap all the other podcasts probably within a couple seasons. Third most published podcast in the Southside Sox Populi annals. And also an originator of another influential podcast we're going to talk about a little bit here, the Estrogen Power Hour. And that is Chrystal O'Keefe, fresh off another podcast. Thank you, Chrystal, for joining us here.
Yes, thank you. I just finished recording episode 83. Right. About 2 hours before this.
Chrystal is, if you haven't figured this out, relentless.
And I pulled big names. I
don't
know when this comes out, but spoiler alert, it's Chris Towers of CBS Sports.
It's a big one. If there's no other purpose to podcast 600, it is to promote all our other podcasts. Chrystal breaks the tape first. Representing every podcast it seems like we've ever done, except let's say the gender exclusive ones, because he's appeared on all of them. But for purposes of this podcast, he might represent what is now called Sox Pop on the farm, and that is Super Joseph Resis, the other side of the former Indianapolis field office, now the Indy Cali field office. Yes, we still have cubicle space in 2 different locations. Joe Resis. Joe, you've been on a lot of these. Thank you for hopping on for yet another one.
Yes, my pleasure. This is always a lot of fun.
And third in the batting order, but not third in overall energy, neck and neck with Chrystal in terms of just sheer relentlessness. It is the host of Ladies Night, the spiritual successor to the Estrogen Power Hour, which actually began with another name. We'll get to that. Wonder if Chrystal remembers. She probably does. And that is Melissa Sage-Bollenbach. She is on all sorts of other podcasts as well, but her hosting duties is for Ladies Night. Thank you for joining us on this 600 celebration, Melissa.
Yay, I'm super excited to be here as the rookie in this group of wonderful, esteemed, experienced professionals. I'm thrilled to be included in the mix.
Okay, Chrystal, Joe, she's trying to say we're all old and grizzled, but that's cool. She said it in a chipper way, so it's all good. And it's worthy of pointing out, even though this is publishing, of course, we're not live, that Joe has minor league update writing duty, and Melissa is the recap writer as we record. It is not meant to be taken as a lack of devotion to the farm system or to the White Sox team. But let's face it, 600 only comes around once a year, 100 type of anniversary. So thank you for taking the time out and just watching the games, maybe, with one eye. Okay, Mothership Podcast, got 191 of them. We've also devoted some time. Lee Allen and son Will were invited to this 600 celebration. Not sure if they're going to make it or not. I did because they were technically, in a sense, there's a lot of weird history here. Sort of in a sense, our very first podcast, I did record with them, and it's going to come right after this one in the playlist. A Sharing Sox sort of look back. I've never really had them on the Mothership podcast as a father-son team. And as that duo. So we sort of devoted a little bit of special time to that. Again, that invitation went out to some of the other programs as well. And we, who knows, there could be 3-4 other little celebration podcasts coming. We're going to focus on a few others. I won't run down the whole list, even though I did do all the research and tracked all of our podcasts. We have one podcast, technically not quite that. We have one that only had one episode. We had a couple that only had 2 episodes. But yes, on the Upside Mothership podcast at 191, technically, even though we're time traveling because this is just 190. Sharing Sox at 143, and the very first one stretching back to the Sports Illustrated days, back when we were doing so much video. It's like, who would take time to do? Who wants it? This video. Ironically, at Sports Illustrated, if you look at the site now, there's no video anymore. They did the pivot to video thing like late in the first place after Facebook had already duped everyone anyhow. And ironically enough, no videos there any longer, but all the writing is. So go figure. Started way back then. They've kept it going. 143. They started way back on September 9th, 2020. Back when the White Sox weren't even in the playoffs for the first time. We were so innocent then. Visiting Dugout began March 20th, 2023. And until I wrote all this down, I did not realize that exactly 1 year later, the debut episode of Ladies' Night, March 20th, 2024, was published. Kismet. And Joe, just to not leave him out, the Farm Podcast, of which he has played an increasing role. Initially, it was pretty much me and Darren Black. Darren's gone now. Joe has really stepped in as sort of our main go-to farm voice and, of course, farm writer. 60 episodes began in May 2021. We don't have Lee and Will here. Let's just address that one up top because it's the only one we have right now. There's been some other plans, and we have had like relatives on a podcast, but it is a father-son podcast. It's sort of novel and interesting. I'd just be interested to know from the three of you, your thoughts of having a program like that. I mean, baseball is a pretty family, oriented or, everything, fathers and sons, of course, but it's sort of a neat thing to have running this long. Thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a super cool idea, and they definitely have the space. I mean, they own that space. There isn't really any other group that I can think of out of 5 zillion White Sox podcasts that there are that have, they have siblings or whatever, but to have that father-son dynamic is really cool. Definitely something that I'm interested in pursuing, hopefully at some point.
Yes, there are rumors.
Yes, with my kid, if he ever gets past his science class. So we'll see. We're in the home stretch. We'll see.
Man, if me ever doing a podcast was based on getting through a science class, I would never be on a single podcast. Joe or Chrystal, any thoughts about the Sharing Sox program?
Always a good listen. I really like the contrast of like the hearing sort of those various voices from the different generations is always it's a unique blend that they have, and of course there's some very good chemistry there as well, which is I feel like it's very wholesome content, the way that they interact, and they're able to give their takes on various events going on within the organization, and most of the time I agree with what they're saying as well. So I think it's always a very good source of information for sure.
Those actors, you can't keep them off the stage. Come on, they just want to be on the stage. Let's be honest. Chrystal, as someone who knows, not that I would ever want to condemn your poor son to such a fate, but I mean, theoretically, you could be applying these waters as well. The concept's sort of neat, right? As a mother yourself.
Yeah, as a mother of a teenager who is very into baseball and sadly also a White Sox fan with me, and who I've mentioned before is taking broadcasting classes because he wants to be a sports broadcaster one day. It's definitely something that kind of goes on in our house on a daily basis anyway. He will see a notification come through and immediately come up and talk to me about it. So it's fun that they're able to do that. And baseball is very prevalent in my family anyway. I got it from my Aunt Jill. And so it's always nice to have that bond between family members, even if you're rooting for the White Sox.
Yeah. Or even if they're rooting for the wrong team, because let's face it, we come from an area where there are two teams, so you're going to run into somebody.
My aunt is a Cubs fan and her husband is a Reds fan. So that's kind of what you get stuck with if you're in Indiana.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you got to you're doing that thing where you're just grabbing for something close. Okay, I'd be remiss not to acknowledge the great Tommy Barbee, who played a big role in a lot of our programming, including Killer Bees with Keelan Ballou. He's, of course, our Father Soxivus. We did that 3 years in a row, I want to say, at least 2 years in a row. We skipped it just out of, I think, sheer fatigue. I think Tommy had already drifted from us at that point, but I mean, we did not revive the Soxivus celebration this off season because it's like, well, we all got Cole with that number 121, so forget it. But I definitely got to acknowledge Killer Bees. Started right before Halloween in 2020. That was always a very fun listen. I will never, ever be able to hear or even see the words Doobie Brothers without thinking about their vamping. Both Keelan and Tommy at their breaks, going into them and coming out, singing, I believe, pretty much always What a Fool Believes. But I don't know how that happened, how that started, but I started to look forward to it. And they had 12 episodes. That's a dozen Doobie Brothers forays at the
I was a
least.
guest on Killer Bees too.
You were. Yes, you were. Yeah, I mean, I'm giving Joe all this credit. He's in every podcast, but I mean, let's face it, Chrystal pops up everywhere, including many podcasts far outside of, including regular ones she hosts and produces, but far outside of just the Sox Populi and Southside Sox universe. But didn't want to skip past Tommy anyway. We do miss you, Father Soxivus. So come back to us one day. We're going to get to some more direct Chrystal and Melissa content, but let's jump to Joe here for a second. The Southside Sox at the time, now it's sort of the Sox Pop on the Farm podcast, debuted May 4th, 2021 with Darren Black and James Fox. So you can imagine how compelling a listen that was. And let me add an additional twist to that. My microphone was off the entire podcast, and neither of them told me that was the case. It had gotten unplugged. I was like, showing off. Do any of you guys have that? I see Melissa's baffled there, but I had one of those, like, I forget what it's called. Cool. It says I'm a podcaster because, I'm talking into the thing, right? And it was unplugged. So you can sort of hear me shouting, but you can't really actually hear the dulcet tones of my extremely professional broadcast voice. So there's a little trivia. Somehow we've done 60 getting started that way. Joe, you played an increasing role in these, including our very last ones, top on the playlist before this one. Your thoughts on the importance of having something that does, I guess, address the minor leagues and try to cover them, in a way that is comprehensive, but also relates to the average fan without maybe necessarily talking over or under them?
It's definitely important to have, a good source of information for, what is going on in the minor leagues. I mean, generally teams that emphasize their farm systems do well, and it certainly is an important element of team long-term success. And so yeah, I feel like it's a very good way of summarizing recent events that have happened, and sort of breakout players who might not be rated that highly in the farm system. They get some attention there, and it's sometimes a big part of a team becoming successful is being able to kind of find some talent from those lesser known prospects. And I think that that's one of my favorite elements of that podcast.
Chrystal, I'm going to give you a break because you suffer enough. I don't expect that you listen to hours of minor league podcasting, but Melissa is someone who is on the verge of making her Sox Pop on the Farm debut. I don't know, in about maybe a month's time. Your thoughts on how often you're able to check in on it, keep up with it, and of course, the expertise of the hosts and co-hosts. Clearly, that's obvious.
What I like about the podcast that we do about the minors and the kind of the approach that we take, it's not sharing like so much of the nitty gritty about their stats and their swing styles and the things like that, because I feel like there's definitely a group of people who are very interested in that. But I think that there are just a group of fans who are interested in learning about the players and where we got them from. Were they free agents? Did we get them in the draft? Did we get them in trades and things like that? And then how they're doing on just like a very basic level. And I also feel like we have quite a few players' families who follow us too. Yeah. And I think that they appreciate how we cover as well. Because I think for the most part, we're pretty supportive too in the way that we talk about them. Yeah. And try to like highlight the positives that we're seeing. And I think that kind of makes it unique in how we look at things.
Joe, you'll be happy to know I've gotten no message from Larry Schultz responding to you calling out. You didn't do that, but calling out Noah Schultz last podcast. So, maybe you're in the clear.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And yes, Noah Schultz, I'm very much on his hype train still.
We do have to, we have to be honest too. Like, yes, we love the player and they're doing great overall, but when they have a hiccup or an issue, we have to talk about it. We can't just pretend that it doesn't exist. So.
Well, and there's some comfort in maybe getting into the trenches a little bit with guys, at least when we talk about like a first round draft choice. I mean, not that we should bury anyone, but I mean, to examine Colson Montgomery's struggles there's no way. I mean, we're not going to pick on a 20th round guy because that's just, that's gravy. That's house money. Colson Montgomery, you expect a major leaguer. And when you're in Arizona instead of Charlotte or Chicago, yeah, probably fair to bring it up. Okay, let's get off the farm. Taking my farm hat off. We're going to head into the break. We're not going there yet, but Chrystal O'Keefe is going to sort of bridge our break, take us into it and come out of it, because that's going to be this. We're segging some shows here, but visiting Dugout. This is the first one we're going to dig into a little bit more deeply. Debuts March 20, 2023. If I recall, Chrystal, I messaged you and said, you are welcome to be doing more. You're great on the stuff you do. Is there something you think you want to do? And do you want, I think I even said you want to co-host the main pie, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm pretty sure that the idea that you came up with pretty immediately was what turned out to be visiting a Dugout. Do I have that wrong? Lee couldn't remember how they even started Sharing Sox. So, I'm not quite Lee's age. I'm no Duty Geezer, but that said, I might be misremembering. Yeah.
So conversation, it was you bullying me and said, Chrystal, you don't do enough. The 100 of 160 games that you cover.
This is all true, honest.
And the creation of Estrogen Power Hour and Soxy Chicks will not be enough. I urge you to take on even more by hosting a podcast that you record 2 to 3 times a week.
This is literal, by the way. This is literal. Chrystal is, if you're not watching, Chrystal is reading off the actual message sent between us. So yeah, that is literal.
It's like you don't do enough.
Okay.
Please do more.
Yeah, you spun that properly. You notice how marshmallow soft I made that story, that origin story sound. But yes, the bitterness and the finger pointing. Go figure. I forgot it was so hostile. So, well, here's the thing, Chrystal. You did.
Whoopsie.
Oh boy, bullying works, people. No, I mean, really, this was a great idea you came up with. I think we hashed out the visiting dugout pretty quickly. I don't know. You had a connection to some art that came up, I imagine, relatively quickly. So, I mean, it took off pretty well. I know it's cruising now in a third year where it's like the guests are, getting better and bigger. You've already promoted some of that. So, I mean, it's getting more and more deluxe. But, I mean, pretty much right out the gate, you had a feel for it. It's a straightforward format, but always fun.
Yeah. It's been really fun to do because I've been able to meet a ton of people, which has kind of expanded my network, which also kind of expands like the Southside Sox network. Mm-hmm. If you're getting all of these different fans coming in because, people obviously aren't obligated to, but, people retweet it and share it and do whatever. So it's been nice to meet all of these different people and just learn about how other teams operate, because sometimes when you're stuck in White Sox land, you're like, wow, it's horrible here. We really have it rough. But then you talk to Aaron Cameron with the A's and you're like, oh, wait, no, John Fisher is an actual monster. Or, today with Chris Towers, he was like, the Marlins got rid of him and I still to this day don't understand it. And I was like, hey, we're in the same boat. We got rid of her too. So yeah, it's been super, super fun to just do this, even if it's very time consuming.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, thank God you get the off season off. Ha ha ha. I mean, like that's some sort of compensation. But I mean, thank God, think somehow it's not a year-long thing. How did you arrive at that? I mean, it must have been something that cooked a little bit in your head before I pointed the finger at you. But I mean, what made you start it?
Honestly, it wasn't really something I would see very often. Yeah. I would occasionally go on the Pesky Report and talk and kind of preview sort of with like the Red Sox people. But even still, it was more just, kind of being silly. We weren't really talking about like strengths and weaknesses and everything that I asked on Visiting Dugout. So it was just something that I didn't really see a lot of and thought this is kind of where I just sink my claws into and take over. And again, you don't see a lot of podcasts about sports in general by women. So again, it was like, this is kind of where I want to corner this market and take over. And then it got popular and was successful.
With all of Chrystal's extra energy, she exploited the market inefficiency of series previews. I mean, not to call out our Fans First Sports Network brethren and a few sistren, but when we put this together after Vox, dumped all our podcasts, it was like, oh yeah, if we have this network, we can be talking, we'd be doing like season preview stuff all together and blah. And I mean, granted, nobody's taking that lead. I mean, maybe who has that space in their lives or whatever. But I mean, it's always sounds like a better, and we've, Chrystal and I mean, we've certainly seen, where folks are like drumming up noise about it. And I'm sure it never really comes to pass. They preview maybe 3 series in the whole year. Definitely not pretty much every, certainly every new opponent, the way you're doing it as devoted as you are, as evidenced by the fact that there are 800 visiting dugouts in, 3 seasons. So yeah, you're making up ground real quick. You'll pass us all soon enough. We're going to break. We're going to come out of it and discuss another Chrystal O'Keefe podcast, fewer episodes. And that will seg us into, we'll let Melissa talk again. But We'll take a break and wrap up visiting Dugout and then chat more about other stuff. Hang with us for about 1 minute. Compelling 600th podcast for Sox Populi Southside Sox coming up. White Sox fans, it is the Mothership Podcast 190 here at Sox Populi, and that is 600 on our megaphone player. Technically, if you want to get all like up about it, we're probably at about like 613. There's some missing in action ones for Sports Illustrated. The very first Northside Sox podcast, I think, is missing to history. I'm going to dig all that stuff up and put it on our megaphone player one day. I dug up an old Nancy Faust thing and put it on our YouTube. I can, I got archives. It's not really top priority. I have a few more minutes per day than Chrystal O'Keefe does typically, but I'll do my best to dig that stuff up because, there are White Sox 2020 playoff fans, completists who might need to hear pre-game playoff podcasts like Sharing Sox did for us at Sports Illustrated. So let's get those up. Quick data before we get back to Chrystal and, roundtable it a little bit. First podcast, Southside Sox Mothership, January 28th, 2020. Not really yes and no. That was with Janice Valenzuela, who covered Sox Fest for Southside Sox. That was our discussion. She was our very first guest on our first podcast, sorta asterisk. Number 100, also a Southside Sox Mothership. Number 42, that was in 2021. Number 200 was a post-game podcast. It was saying goodbye to the 2021 season, October 12th, 2021. And did we think on that day it would be the last playoff discussion we would have until even this day? And unfortunately, for many years still to come, deep sigh. Number 300 was a Sharing Sox. It was number 83. That was in 2022. And then 400 and 500, both visiting dugouts. Shocker, visiting dugout comes up a lot on the playlist. Number 17 was a Tigers preview in May 2023. Number 500 was the 45th visiting dugout. It was a Twins preview. Again, shocker that it would be Central Division teams. And that was as recently as April 29th, 2024. 600, you're listening to it right now in May 2025. So apparently about every year, 100 podcasts just fly away. So see you next May for number 600. First, before we get to another Chrystal O'Keefe podcast and just hand the microphone over to her permanently, as if that hasn't already been done, Joe, Melissa, thoughts on our relentless visiting dugout preview series where you cannot fall out of bed without hearing Chrystal O'Keefe previewing a series on your podcaster player?
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we know Chrystal is awesome, but really, really groundbreaking, right? Because you don't hear it anywhere. And the fact that our team is so bad and she's still so tuned into and, always looking for new voices too, on social media, she, just doesn't kind of rest on her laurels with, I've always used so-and-so, but I'm looking for new people to talk about this team, that team. It's, we're really lucky to have not only her and everything she does, but somebody that sees, the ability to innovate and fill a need, because we do in White Sox social media venue, we have so many people and places that cover us to fill a part that nobody else is doing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a great product. Absolutely. It's always nice to get out of the White Sox fan bubble every now and again and kind of get a sense of what fans of other teams are reacting to, kind of what we can expect to see from them, and kind of what the expectations are from people who are devoted to those teams. Because it can get easy a lot of the time to kind of get locked in on just, the individual team that, one person is a fan of. And it's nice to kind of escape that every now and again. And with, with this podcast, it's really, not only do you get to do that, you get to do it often. And it really results in, I feel, me becoming a more informed fan about things that are happening throughout the league. And I'm sure that a lot of other people feel the same way about it.
Chrystal, I know for a fact the inner office mail system is still very strong, even though it's now a Cali Indy field office. The special envelopes will still get out to the coast and back, so you can slip the check to Joe through inner office mail, no problem at all. Joe is very sweet, Melissa as well, and fair, very fair acknowledgement. This is something would be very easy. I'm not that I ever doubt Chrystal O'Keefe. It'd be very easy to see peter out. Very easy to see, oh, well, people aren't into it, or I can't get somebody for the Marlins. So, I mean, like I did last year with the podcast, the team sucks. Who wants to do podcast? I mean, let's face it, probably none of you did either, but I'll call myself out. Who wants to do it? I mean, obviously the pace really slacked, and it would be easy to. I mean, I imagine, Chrystal, for you, it's a bit of an outlet of, I can think about something that's not the White Sox. So that's got to be a reason that, I mean, not to say it's easy to keep going, but the fact that you get a little bit of light, or something piercing through the clouds of just this White Sox, oh my God, no, not anymore. You get enough of that in the day-to-day coverage. That's got to just give you just a little bit of air, fill the lungs a little bit, because it's not always another lousy team. Oftentimes a team like, hey, I'm excited about, or I like that team.
Yeah, it's fun because you get something like I said, I want to try to like hold space for people. I gave Aaron Cameron as an example where he was able to just kind of say what he really felt about the A's. But then you have someone like Eric Steven come on and talk about the Dodgers and how the Dodgers are phenomenal and they're always going to be so great. But it's fun just hearing from other people and kind of like what Joe said, what people are like high on with their team or what they're negative about. Like today I heard all about Sandy Alcantara just not being who he was pre-Tommy John surgery. So, and that's something that I don't tune into Marlins games very often. So that's interesting to just hear the struggles, but also the triumphs of other teams.
Yeah. Okay, before we seg into maybe our last main podcast to discuss, besides the mothership, that we just put that last in case we run out of time, like you can never run out of time. This is the seg here because I am afraid, or I fear sometimes I overhype this. I don't think it's possible to overhype it, but I don't know. I'm a little sensitive about it, but or I'm aware that I should be, well, whatever. I'll stop talking. Estrogen Power Hour. We had 5 episodes. It was sort of short-lived, but I don't think it's a stretch to say it was groundbreaking and revolutionary. It got the attention of the White Sox in a good way. That's the only, honestly, I believe the only time I've gotten, or we've gotten, good feedback from the White Sox. You might be aware they're a little persnickety. They're a little negative. And they seek the negative. The idea that unsolicited, not, hey, did you hear this podcast? What'd you think? But unsolicited, an executive at the White Sox, if not multiple, but certainly one, was so very excited to hear that program, which started out as, Chrystal, do you remember?
I'm trying to, and I can't. It
was I believe a Keelan development, because I think she was the one who dumped it on me, but said, hey, I got something new. Polished Piece of Weird was the first episode.
Yes.
And then pretty quickly, Janice, I believe, came up with Estrogen Power Hour. I think just as an offhanded joke, but could it be more perfect?
And we touted it as like a pirate radio takeover for that first episode because we didn't tell you anything.
That's right. I do remember that.
We all recorded on someone else's Zoom or maybe even Skype. I don't know. We recorded on it. We went completely rogue. Recorded this episode with the 4 of us.
Yeah, it was we don't know if this will even get published.
We all kind of just mess it. It's kind of one of those things where you just do it and ask for forgiveness later.
Sure.
And so we kind of messaged Brett and we're like, oh, hey, by the way, the 4 of us teamed up and we just decided to do this podcast.
Yeah.
We're going to continue.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't cussed here yet, so I won't. But I mean, I think I won't say to my credit, but I mean, I know my reaction was, holy crap. Absolutely. Can you do this every night? Because it hit the mark square between the eyes. Now, granted, compared to, and, of course, we're going to get to discussing ladies' night. There's, of course, a ton of parallel there. And I dare say that the four of you, or oftentimes the four of you, I don't think it was the four every time, but there was a little bit more axe grinding, completely justifiably. And I think that was sort of the origin story of the podcast itself. But I mean, necessary, and missing out there.
And we kind of opened it to, again, what people weren't necessarily talking about, because no offense to the two in the room, but a lot of baseball podcasts are hosted by white men that are, big into stats, and it's just a stats podcast. And we were talking about the completely ridiculous bag policy at the stadium and what we had to carry in. And it was like, I have this teeny tiny bag that doesn't fit a wallet or a phone in it. And we had an episode all about Chris Sale taking a knife to jerseys. Like we celebrated the anniversary of that. But we just talked about whatever we thought fit.
And not bearing the lead at all, but the direct and relentless, and to this day, marginalization of you as voices in this sport. I would like to think that was the genesis, even though you brought out other topics, but and again, necessary. You still don't get that coverage, and if you do, it's those people are complaining rather than it being this rogue pirate, publish it if you dare program.
And I know we haven't mentioned Soxy Chicks too much, but I like to think that Bailey and myself kind of continued that, but in a way where we were just talking about what's going on in baseball. We weren't necessarily talking about how, well, I mean, sometimes we do, talking about how we were getting like mansplained on Twitter, or, people not thinking that we know baseball, when in reality, Bailey and I know more about baseball than anybody should.
That was just the very last podcast title of Soxy Chicks, correct?
Yeah,
because once again, you got feedback that was like,
somebody like criticizing us, but we kind of carried that torch over, even though it wasn't always consistent, but now we're trying to get back to that. But it was just two girls just talking about everything that was going on in Major League Baseball. And again, that's just not something that you're used to or you're going to really get.
As sort of the in here, although great point, and we're going to take a weird break in just a second, but I want to get this in as sort of the inheritor of the Estrogen Power Hour slot. And that's the wrong way to put it, but I mean, in spirit. Melissa, your thoughts on that program, your thoughts of just the notion of it. Obviously, you're sort of you're continuing the spirit, as Bailey and Chrystal still are as well. And as I hope a few other podcasts out there in the world, I don't catch them all. It's enough to get through 600 of these in just a handful of years, but it had to make an impact, whether literally or even just knowing what it was about, realizing the impact it had, and saying, maybe we can keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of recalling a page from the Brett Ballantini playbook that sounded very familiar to what Chrystal said. Like, you're not doing enough, Melissa. We used to have this really cool podcast, and this is what it was. And any interest in that? And so, because being newer, I didn't know about it. So once I thought about it, and I was terrified of trying to be in charge of any type of podcast whatsoever. But luckily being able to look up to, Chrystal and Jackie at the time, who was also doing a lot of stuff on the site, and just saying, there are a few voices out there, but I think we can add to the voices and do it in a little bit of a different way. And we're kind of still evolving too, but I don't think there can be enough women talking about baseball, because we have really cool insights and thoughts and look at it differently, I think, than, the traditional voices. So
if you're not watching, it's not a literal dunk tank, but we do have a figurative dunk tank at this point, and I am sitting on the seat. I'm not taunting anyone, but we got a couple guests here who are lobbing the softballs at me. Deserved. I've been called out now twice. Hey, Joe, as a fellow white guy who does podcasts sometimes about numbers, the impact that both of these programs have had on you as a listener, a viewer, as a fan.
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. One of the things I really like about the Southside Sox community and our overall staff is, how many different perspectives that we have. And, that goes even beyond just, differences of opinions, or kind of, when we became fans, or kind of, how we enjoy to take in games. Like, also it's important to have just in general diversity. And, that's, as was mentioned previously, like, that's uncommon in a lot of spaces in the sports realm in general. And it's very good to have a variety of voices, and all things considered, when you sort of have a variety like that, good things tend to happen, and you'll generally get better results. So certainly the communities that you had mentioned, within our overall community, they certainly add a lot of value as well.
Joe, not that we need defending, but just so that we're not too overly marginalized, I just need to point out that Chrystal O'Keefe used to be, although who knows what she wishes now, used to be a Cubs fan, and Melissa married one. I mean, come on, we're hardcore. You were up there, but we were up there with Benetti. I mean, come on, you got it.
Yes, for sure. Yes, good times. But yes, it's never too late, and I'm very glad that we have Chrystal on our side now.
I was getting lonely in the Indianapolis field office, because like, why do I have a field office? There's one person here. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, before we seg to ladies' night, there's the connection. Wow, well, you're a mastermind, Brett. So we don't forget something, and I'm glad you mentioned. I mean, there's nothing we should skip over. Let me just run them down. Already ran down the top ones. Let's pick up with visiting Dugout, Sox Pop on the Farm, Northside Sox, 23 programs, Janice Valenzuela, and Sam Sherman. Good old Sam. Where are you at, Sam? Dr. Sam, whatever he's doing now. Counseling Sox fans, probably. Post-game podcast, 20 programs. Why? Ladies' night, 13 and coming. Killer Bees, 12. Pre-game podcast, 10. We don't care about it's mostly reacting to what horrible thing happened in a game. So, of course, there's twice as many post-game podcasts. Dugout Metrics. Oh, AKA white guys talking about numbers. That's 10 programs. Began in 2020. Soxy Chicks, 7. Now, that's not really true, because Soxy Chicks has many more than 7 episodes. But in our family, it is still just at 7. And if we can just keep Bailey and Chrystal on the same wavelength, and if the White Sox and or Red Sox are in any way compelling to talk about, not that that's all they talk about, we'll have many, many more. Whew, thank God. Dish Deluxe, that's the day in Sox history, for those of you who are not into acronyms. Started that one up. Mostly did that with Mark Liptak. Got fatigued with it. There's too much to do. History's only so interesting. Oh, I don't know. At some point, we'll only do history podcasts, because why would you talk about the present White Sox? Estrogen Power Hour / polished piece of weird. That one's available now. It's out there for any of you who want to start up a podcast. 5 programs. Live. Those were our YouTube live, whatever programs that we also turned into podcasts. Why would you go live with the White Sox, but I guess people still do it. Timeout. That was a diabolik thing. That was a diabolik joint, like a 5-minute, 2-minute little thing, just like shout at something. I don't know. She's trying to find her place. 2 programs. Didn't really last. Planet White Sox with Trooper Galactus, where I pirated 53 miles west of Venus by the B-52s as intro music. Shh! Don't tell anybody. I didn't do that on the Fans First Sport. It doesn't work. Don't send me any cease and desists. Group therapy, Sam Sherman coming back, making one more run at it after Northside Sox. He had patients who would pay him, not just fellow guests on a podcast. So don't blame me there. Explain it to me like I'm 5. That is the inimitable Keelan Ballou took that on. I would say that podcast had the highest ratio of brilliant guests, no diss on Keelan as the great host, as she had Meredith Willis, the physics of the baseball, and then Eugene Friedman, labor issues. So she, only 2 episodes. Darn you, Keelan, but 2 pretty awesome episodes. And finally, I skipped Big Blurt. That was the Rob Coletti joint with Bill Meinke. They did 8 of those, so and always with singing. And the final podcast, which isn't even on our megaphone player because it just went up on YouTube, from Jackie Chrystal, our only one that was just 1 episode, Secondhand Embarrassment. It aspired to more, but then, the White Sox interfered, as they often do. Jackie, come back. We love you, Jackie. Okay, speaking of Jackie Chrystal, a guest on the very first Ladies' Night, which was, in a sense, at least as Melissa Sage-Bollenbach explains it, under threat from an editor at Southside Sox to continue the Estro. Ladies' Night. We got a little origin. So Chrystal, from sort of the other side of it, you've guessed it on 1, I believe just appeared on 1. Sort of seen where your pirate podcast now has gone into something that is really growing into its own. Your thoughts, your feelings about that?
Well, I mean, it's way more polished than anything I ever did. Melissa runs a tight ship, and I appreciate that because I've been on some that are just kind of all over the place. And I'm just happy that there is kind of a new life with it. I mean, they've had great guests, and hopefully you guys catch the big fish that is Nancy, because Estrogen Power Hour, we tried, but our schedules just never worked with Nancy. And so, hopefully that comes to fruition, because that's huge. But yeah, I'm happy that it kind of sprung into a new life form and can be continued and much nicer and less bad words or calling players hot than Estrogen Power Hour.
Yes. There's a little higher garrulousness quotient with Estrogen Power Hour than so far there has been. I mean, that could change. This is still a living podcast, so it could change. But getting Nancy Faust on there is not going to help the garrulousness quotient. That's going to really actually torpedo it downward. Melissa, what's the best thing about doing Ladies' Night?
So to me, the best, as it's kind of evolved last year when we started it, was basically just, ladies from our staff, whenever we could kind of figure it out and get us to join, talking about, recency and whatever was happening with the White Sox, that day, that week, that month, whatever. But as kind of the off season rolled around and I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, first of all, I want to be more consistent with it. But second of all, especially as, when I was growing up, there were no women, barely any women anywhere. And, now there are. And so can we somehow highlight them and appreciate them and learn from them and give hope to other women who are, sitting there looking, how do I get involved, or can I get involved, or is there even space for me? And so to me, that's the coolest part is, bringing somebody like Julie Swike-Gannon on and talking about her background. And I mean, I could talk to her forever. She's got so many cool stories and such an inspiration. But then Ashley Sanders, somebody who's, in their 20s and is just getting started. And so being able to bring that forth and celebrate it, to me, has been the coolest part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always sort of, in some ways, probably because I, invited them into Southside Hustle about the same. I always sort of associate Super Joe Resis and Ashley Sanders, and both of them are dynamic in their own ways. Obviously, we miss Ashley and wish she was around, and thank God Joe hasn't also flown to some video game company, or both of them are in California. I don't know what their deal is, but okay, you Chicago suburbanites flying out to California, but yeah, Joe, you've given thoughts on, I guess, both of these programs, but the ongoing aspect of Ladies Night, and now also being able to fulfill something Estro didn't ever, quite get to, because after all, he was a pirate. They're like, are we going to get paid? Are we going to get published? The fact that it can actually be plotted out to have these guests frequently, that's an added dimension that probably, as a listener, sort of makes, you excited and like, okay, what's the next one going to be?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of value added there, without a question. Definitely, it's goes far beyond the reach of your standard, White Sox related discussions. With regards to the California thing, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of cool opportunities out here, and good weather. We'll see how long we end up staying out here. There's definitely some perks. I think it's probably fairly even before we moved out here. I think in the back of my mind, I was there's always some appeal, I feel like, of the West Coast, even for someone who has never lived there and isn't overly familiar with it.
Yeah. Trust me, Joe, Melissa, Chrystal, those of us who live full time outside of your home places, we envy your freedom. So yes, not to say that Illinois is equivalent to California, but it's closer than most. Okay, I don't know if we've quite lauded Colleen and Keelan and Yanise enough, but okay, gals, don't be strangers. We're here. You know where to find us.
Well,
don't go to the Mets for good.
I still have Colleen. We
you
still
do.
host things together.
Dugout of History, absolutely. Let's just keep promoting. Go for it.
Completely. Please listen to Dugout of History. That's my other of 75 podcasts that I do.
Yeah, just make note that as I the origin story involved a bit of a haranguing, that Chrystal was still just choosing a la carte, choosing a few more podcasts, because like, what, Fridays at about 6 p.m. Yeah, I got space. Colleen, what you doing?
Yeah, we just talked about the Kansas City Blues in the last episode.
All right. Okay, I get to step down off the dunk tank for a second. Although, let's wind this up and talk just a little bit about this ridiculous, preposterous mothership podcast, which is rapidly sprinting toward 200 episodes. And I guess if you dig down into the archives, we might be really, really close to a 200th. It's something that each of you have spent a lot of time on. In fact, in Joe and Chrystal's case to a degree, reaching back to some of almost the very first podcasts we did before you probably even knew what you're getting into enough to say gently back out politely and calmly. Thoughts on having a regular program, getting to, I don't know, mothership thoughts. I don't know how I can lead this in. I've already been on the dunk tank. So thoughts about this is sort of our core program. And, although visiting a dugout will catch it, it's not there yet.
Soon. I mean, it's always fun to just talk about, it's always just our woes these days, but what I love about this, and you had mentioned live mothership podcasts, and I just would love to very quickly revisit when you were in another country and left me and Melissa.
Listeners, do you detect a theme? Please continue.
You left us in charge of the whole site and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go gallivant in Paris and hang out with my wife and hamster. And meanwhile, back home, Rick Hahn is getting fired, and we're like, well, shit.
Yep.
And so I was like, nope, you know what? We're doing it. I assembled my Avengers, and I was like, we're going live, and we're talking about Rick Hahn being fired, even though it was only a very small time of joy in our lives, just like an hour before
brief.
we're like, oh, it's gonna be Getz.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have something like that where we can just be disgruntled White Sox fans. Since that's what it's really turned into last.
Yeah. The podcast started that way, even though I guess you could uptalk it. I guess there was some light, and there were young players that we didn't know that they're all going to break down or end up being sort of bad. And then we had a brief moment, a very, very brief moment, partly stained by a pandemic that killed millions. And then since then, appropriately, misery. Melissa and Joe, you are not required to have a sweeter answer than that. In fact, you're welcome to lean into Chrystal's reliving the sole highlight of the Mothership podcast. But, I'm curious about your thoughts on sort of having this as a gathering spot that's supposed to sort of umbrella everything.
I think, obviously the frustrations part has, been key for all of us. And the fact that we communicate with each other, via Slack and with words. It's great to see each other's faces too. And, I think we have a great camaraderie. And so to be able to share that, but I also like that we can share our joyous moments, that we had opening day, for example. And I mean, we were all at that moment, you would have thought that we were all they're winning the division. I mean, we were really, truly, genuinely excited. And it felt good. And so to embrace those moments when it actually feels good to celebrate, I appreciate that. And then I also really appreciate that I've been able to share this experience with my family. As you mentioned, I've had, done a podcast with my husband when we did a crosstown thing, and Sage has been on a couple of times. And my mother listens to all of our podcasts and she loves them. That's so to me, that's just, it's just really cool as a kid to know, my mom's proud of me. She loves listening to me talk about baseball. And she's always like, you just know so much. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I sound like I do, because I really don't. But and so it's to me, and I think back to that very first one I did in 2022, and I was terrified. I was like, I have no idea how to do anything like this, and came with all my notes. Now I still come with my notes.
Yeah, it's just then you had 50 pages of notes. Now you have 5.
Yeah, and I have them kind of as a backup, if I need to, as opposed to I have to have it with me. If I don't, I'm going to freak out. So yeah, so it's really special to me.
And Chrystal, you've had some Mama O'Keefe experiences as well with the podcast, right? I mean, I think you shared those with me.
Yeah, Barbara loves the podcasts. She gets updates on Apple News. So if I write a recap or post an article, she'll see it and I get a text, and it's just wonderful with hand emojis. And her son, begrudgingly listens to us too.
If my mom could only have been as sweet to my wife, I guess she just needed to write baseball.
I have the best mother-in-law anyone could ever have. I love her, and I will fiercely protect her because she's the greatest.
Beware, Joe, as you enter into this, if a mother says, I won't be a mother-in-law, move the other direction. That's what my mom said. And I was like, wow, awesome. Gotcha. Okay, Joe, mothership, whatever. You've been on a lot.
Nothing but positive words for my future mother-in-law at this time. She is fantastic. Yes. As far as the Mothership podcast, the bad thing about it is it requires me to stay up to date with what is going on the Major League roster. The good news is everything else. And, you know, it really can't be stressed enough, but the community that we have in that, it is a really nice way of sort of decompressing after, you know, a really rough series. We get to kind of unload on how we're feeling and really bond about, you know, the direction of the team wherever it is headed. It's, you know, been mostly pointing down the past few years, but you know, it's really nice to be able to have a community that really shares a lot of those same feelings. And it's, you know, a very cool community. You know, we've had you know, a lot of people come on the Mothership podcast, and you know, that's, you know, the way it should be. We have a lot of different voices coming to that, and it's always a pleasure. I always feel better, you know, at the end of that podcast than I did, you know, before we started it, and you know, I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I forgot to do it. I mean, it was cute that you said that, Melissa, that opening day made us excited enough to, I mean, I don't know what game you're watching, but that they might win the division. But I mean, seriously, even more seriously, maybe all of us could agree, or maybe all of you do, and I'm just the grumpy one. But 2022, that turned out to be a horrible year. But Dylan Cease, night game, Houston shut the Astros down. It was like, oh, okay, hold on, wait a minute. Now, of course, we didn't know what we were in store for yet that season, and we didn't think it was going to be what it was. But boy, it did seem like, man, this is easy. Not to say we are necessarily going to be Will Smith in the empty room, but I mean, that game made you think, well, oh, yeah, man, okay, I'm paying attention, even with Tony La Russa running the team. Oh man, the fun highlights. Okay, Joe, I mean, what we really need to know is, how annoyed are you at being constantly referred to, be it Joseph or Sox Math Champ or whatever all the pet catchphrases I have for you are? This is what this whole podcast is led up to.
Oh, not at all. I quite like it, actually. I get to relive my days in, you know, 2017 through, you know, 2021, taking Sox Math way too seriously. Good times were had though, and yeah, it's fun. And all is good there.
Okay, and it just hit me as we're talking about this now, as I finally get the answer, and now I have the freedom to actually print up the business cards for you and send them out to the Cali side of the Cali Indy home office, and that is what had just been like one of those Nancy Faust plaques they have at Sox Park. White Sox, would you cut it out? Okay, if you don't, I don't know, if you finally ran out of like budget money for statues, do something more than I mean, the plaque's nice. Could you do something more than that? Especially given there's not even like an organist at the park anymore. Anyhow, getting off track. You know, rather than like the Xeroxed sheet they gave you for winning like every year, Joe, sad to say, but it's over now. There's no more Sox Math. That, you know, thanks Brooks Boyer, that ship has sailed. You can get like the legit plaque. You can get the legit marble carving. I mean, I don't know when they're going to send that to you, but I mean, you know, expect that because it's done. You are the Sox Math champion. Not that was ever really in question in all of our hearts, but I mean, officially, in theory, you know, someone's going to catch Babe Ruth and 60 home runs and all that. That can't happen, right? So, you know, sit back and await the granite.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. That's very, very good. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that was a big part, as I recall, of why I am sitting here today as part of this community.
That's true.
And I will, yeah. I will say, even though, you know, back in the late 2010s, given how involved I was in the game, I really, really enjoyed playing it. And yet, like, I will say, like, in this, you know, ongoing community I get to be a part of now, you know, kind of stemming from that is, yeah, that it's been a much bigger source of baseball enjoyment than Sox Math ever was, and you know, that really says a lot given, you know, how much enjoyment that I used to get out of it. So yeah, I think that's is pretty significant. Just I think those close to me, like in my small like friend circles between like my undergrad roommates and close high school friends, they knew how much I was enjoying Sox math in those time periods. So yeah, I think that says a lot as well.
It should be obvious, but Joe Resis joins Southside Sox at a time when I was only inviting contest winners, champions. That was all. That's how I determined it. If you won a contest, it didn't matter what contest. If you won a contest, you got the invite. Joe's just happened to do with baseball and the White Sox, so that was kismet. So yeah, thanks for joining on. And breaking news, you heard it here. Colleen Sullivan and Chrystal O'Keefe's Dugout of History will be joining the Sox Populi family once that contract is up. So somewhere in the 2030s, we'll look forward to hearing some Dugouts of History. We'll leave those nasty Mets behind, and we will luxuriate in the atmosphere of the Chicago White Sox, because everyone wants to do that. They want more White Sox in their lives. So why you'd be podcasting some other team or affiliation or city? Come on, whatever. Yeah, Mrs. Met. Yeah, pretty cool mascot. I mean, no diss on Southpaw, but Mr. and Mrs. Met, pretty cool. Hard to beat. Okay, well, still breaking news. I mean, I can make up my own breaking news. Come on, we're just podcasters and bloggers. Just make stuff up. All right. Well, I guess that winds it up. Oh my God, I asked for Mets content at the end of this celebratory podcast. This podcast didn't quite go the way I hoped it would. It just didn't. I was in the dunk tank, and yeah, well, it's not the first time. It won't be the last time. Or maybe it will be the last time. Congratulations, Chrystal O'Keefe, Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, and Joe Resis, the new hosts of the Southside Sox Populi.
I'm gonna say, just accept your fate that I have taken over.
It's the truth. It used to be Maddie, right? But now it's just Chrystal, and then you can determine where it goes from there. That's fine. So be it. Oh my God, actually, it's more than fine. So don't even begin to tease me with that. All right, it's 600, and again, in a year, I mean, I don't know, we're gonna have an hour-long product. We sort of completely blew off like 500. I think I might have even remarked it to Chrystal at the time, like, I think you just did like the 500 podcast, but this was sort of quick because I just happened to notice, oh wow, we're 5 away, and there's like 800 coming down the pike. So hold on, wait a minute, we better figure this out. Melissa, you're gonna be back in town in time, and then had to get all the invites out to folks who were like, that's an evite I am not going to click on. But again, hey, I tried. We miss all of you, and anyone who is far away from us now is always welcome back. And again, stay tuned in the podcast player, because we're having a 20-minute devotion to Sharing Sox. We learned some hilarious things about the Allen boys, and I made them laugh a few times. And I don't think I got dunk tanked quite as much. So I don't know what the deal with their politeness was. I appreciate that there were no rules being adhered to with the three of you. That honesty is appreciated. Allen's, take notes for next time we talk. But that's coming up as 601. So sort of an extended podcast 600 celebration with the Allens and Sharing Sox. But Chrystal, huge part of the site. And of course, a big part of the site is the podcasting, though you wouldn't know it from reading Southside Sox. But huge. Appreciate all of the effort and the fact that even as I won't like message you after this podcast and say, hey, you know what? It really seemed like Wednesday nights are open. So
it's funny because before Ladies Night came about, you messaged me and you're like, you don't think that I'm telling you to do anything else, but how do you feel about this Ladies Night thing? And we discussed, I was like, I think that because you had mentioned Melissa, and I was like, I think that would be the best hands to put it in. Yes, I agree. But it came off as, Brett, if I have to do one more thing for you, I'm going to scream. So I'm happy that you had suggested it go in
Yes.
someone else's hands
Yes.
instead of me doing yet
Yes.
another.
The intent would never to be to shackle you, but as the lone voice from the Estro extant on the site, I felt it absolutely important to run that idea by you.
My blessing.
Yes, yes. So yes, thank goodness. So no, you won't get that message. But yeah, for all you do is much, much appreciated. I could never have imagined the impact you'd have when we first met over at Sports Illustrated, just to rap about your book and ditching the Cubs, which I imagine was like 95% of the discussion, but you can't blame me. So yes, Christmas in April, May, June, July, August, and September for me with you, Chrystal. Thank you, Joe. You've been around a long time with me. I appreciate having a Sox math champ on staff and all the effort you put out for us, particularly now with the minors, because that is not easy work. And you're doing, the nightly like a trooper. Although on the West Coast, it's easy, right? All the games are over, right? So you should be doing like two.
It is easier to do it on West Coast hours, and it is also easy to write about the minors, relatively speaking, compared to what the alternatives are.
Okay. Hey, you heard Joe. He just volunteered to do all of the ACL games. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. It's on a podcast, so book it. Melissa, least grizzled of the four of us, but you'll catch up in the grizzledness based on all it is that you're doing. Appreciate all you're offering us. And again, that extends, of course, to the podcasting, not just saying, hey, I'll be on the show. Yes, I'll show up. Hey, I'll talk again. In fact, usually you're telling me, okay, wait, people are tired of my voice. I've been on like the last 5 in a row, so I'll just sit this one out if you have anyone else. But you are, of course, always welcome. Taking the baton from the earlier podcasts of Chrystal's to extend it now, which I think, again, I don't really know how to talk about this. I'm sorry to be so awkward, but it's crucially important. And I really appreciate that is what you're doing. In addition to Chrystal continuing with Bailey in your own ways. And, I'm glad you brought it up because, yes, the very title of your last podcast referred directly to the type of marginalization that you still face as a fan of baseball. Wonderful. But Melissa, thank you. Writing and podcasting as well. All three of you. It's much appreciated and crucial. We wouldn't, I always say, if there's no readers or viewers or listening, there's no point to us doing this, but there's literally no point to me. I would not be able to do this without the three of you. And Melissa, obviously you are coming in pretty hard in that category, and it's much appreciated. I'm glad you've run with this. I don't know if the right word is opportunity, but I'll just say opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. I love it here.
Oh, man. Famous last words. Okay, that's all of our epitaph. It's an appropriate time to wind up podcast 600. We love it here. Here lies Brett Ballantini, Chrystal O'Keefe, Super Joseph Resis, and Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, who could have somehow gone to the dark side with her husband and the Cubs, but then she'd be a Cubs fan. And no offense, Sean, but what are you thinking? Anyway, whole different podcast. That could be 602. Anyhow, Mothership will come back up at some point. We try to time it with days off. I don't know. We've done a whole bunch this week, and I'm tired. But yeah, maybe next week we'll come up and we'll track the White Sox on pace for 126 losses or 116, whatever it is at the given point. But it's going to probably fall in between those two. So let's talk more about the White Sox. Thanks, Chrystal, Joe, Melissa. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Viewing. We wouldn't be here for 600 or even one without all of you. So appreciate you being here, and catch us next May for 700, they tell me. And thanks, Hamster, for your intro so long ago.